It's a good morning, it's a good afternoon, it's a good evening. Welcome to this important Ubuntu Radio conversation with Ambassador Mathu Joyini. She's the South African permanent representative to the United Nations. She joins us live from New York in the United States, and we're going to be talking to her particularly on South Africa's foreign policy, looking at issues of multilateralism as well. Ambassador Joyini has been the ambassador to the United Nations since the 22nd of January. That's when she presented her credential, and as she begins her duty there. It has been 76 days since she has been active as an ambassador there in New York. She joins us from New York now. We're quite excited. 76 is quite an important number because it will be the 76th session later this year in September when the United Nations General Assembly will be happening, and she will be one who's going to prepare the program for President Cyril Ramaphosa, who will lead the South African delegation later on this year in New York. So we are glad that she joins us. As we began a series of conversation with South African representatives abroad to find out about how well South Africa has been received, but also the kind of work that South Africa is doing globally as well. She joins me from New York. Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us here as we bring you at this important time for South Africa as we try to we expand our relations with the rest of the world, even at this time of COVID. Thank you so much for making time to speak to us.
Thank you so much. And thanks for inviting me to this conversation.
Talk to us about what significance does South Africa attach to the United Nations and its agency and its work?
The UN is important to South Africa and its foreign policy. I mean, one can go as far as back as that we ourselves as a country, our liberation has been the outcome of UN involvement, UN engagement. So from that point of view, the UN has been involved in South Africa. And then, of course, as we come back into the system, into the multilateral system, South Africa is a strong believer in bringing nations together to reflect on complex issues and trying to resolve issues that we are facing in the world, especially today. So very much believe in multilateralism, if you like. And so the agencies that are there in the UN, they are significant for South Africa's foreign policy, but also domestically in terms of the issues that we are dealing with. So if one were to think about the fact that your foreign policy has to reflect your domestic policies or domestic imperatives, to that extent, then the agencies, remember, some of them are based at home. If you look at the entire UN system at home, led by Ambassador Bekele Thomas. So, and then you have all these UN agencies, UN Women, UNFPA, World Food Programme, and so forth. They're quite critical, and it's important that they align themselves with what South Africa has determined as priorities around our triple challenges. Okay, so we're using them and we are collaborating with them to then address some of the challenges that we have. I want to look at it at that relationship between South Africa and the UN agencies as a mutually beneficial one, because we as South Africa also bring quite a lot to the UN itself and to its agencies. If other than resources and financial resources, we bring to the table a lot of thinking, a lot of assistance to how they do their work. And I'm talking here, Tali, I've just had a number of sessions and meetings with Under-Secretary Generals within the UN system. And without fail, all of them have appreciated how South Africa approaches issues, how we are dealing with issues, and how those are helping them as they are responsible for different agencies to deal with specific issues, to overcome specific issues, whether it's UN Women, our constitution, and how we frame issues and how we deal with issues when we are negotiating helps any one of those agencies. Yesterday, I was having a session with the the Undersecretary General of UNFPA. And again, there appreciating South Africa's constitution, appreciating, in fact, she went as far as appreciating South African diplomats that have come through at different points in reframing issues that are difficult for other member states so that we can move forward and come up with policies that benefit globally other member states. So if you look at it, yes, we have our national interest. We go to these agencies. We play in the space of the global forum, global system of governance. We are bringing our own values, our own principles in terms of how we want things to be looked at, and it's been very telling for me that it's actually appreciated by the UN system itself. You're muted. I cannot hear you, Tali.
Ambassador?
I can hear you now, yes.
Talking about these UN agencies now, the focus that I thought of was, as you mentioned about these agencies and what they do in the country. You do have an agency which is led by South African women. We're talking about United Nations women as well. Have you had interactions with Me Pumzile in terms of her work and UN women as well, talking about UN agencies and the work that we're doing, particularly that a South African is heading such in a strategic position within the United Nations?
Yeah. Yes, I've had a number of sessions with the Undersecretary General and Executive Director of UN Women, Sis Pumzile. Firstly, as a member state, but of course, firstly as a sister from South Africa, but also formally as the head of this important institution, as you say, that really promotes gender equality and empowerment of women across globally. I mean, that's quite an important position to hold. So we are involved as a member state in the work of UN Women. It is critical for us, and hence our participation in the manner that we do in the Commission on the Status of Women. But also recently, we've been involved with her on generation equality, and she's had a very successful week last week in Mexico on generation equality. And the reason I'm saying this, because she may not be able to share, it was so successful that the other Undersecretary Generals in the UN system were actually celebrating this big achievement that she's had on generation equality in Mexico. And this is where you bring all stakeholders, young people, civil society, private sector, to focus on action to advance the cause of women empowerment and gender equality. So she is driving that whole agenda, and she is doing an excellent job at that. And yes, the mission engages with her formally and informally, of course. Tali, you are muted. Go ahead.
No, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Yeah. The issue of women, it's quite important. I mean, you yourself as a South African representative, you have recently been elected as chair of the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women. Talk to me about that.
Look, it's an important role. So firstly, it's South Africa chairing that. and I am the representative of South Africa, who will then be the person chairing the commission for the next 2 years. And as you know, that the commission itself is a global policy-making body of the UN, of course supported by UN Women. It's dedicated exclusively to promoting gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls. So I want to look at this. In fact, you have to approach this role with humility, because everyone tells me, congratulate me, but tells me that it's actually quite a challenging one. So I want to look at it from a two-pronged perspective, if you like. So the one is around how do I carry out these roles within the UN, this role within the UN system, making sure that member states participate meaningfully and ensure that we have a consensus at the end of CSW 66 on that particular topic. And this time around, it'll be on climate action, gender equality and empowerment of women with regard to climate action. So how do I make sure that member states come on board and we discuss this and we shift this forward and move it forward with agreed conclusion that really takes the agenda forward. So I need to think how I play that role, mobilizing together with the bureau. It'll be a bureau with other countries that are working with me, and I'll be chairing that to make sure that we then get the negotiations going. We find each other on addressing this particular issue. Bringing on board not just member states, but also bringing on board civil society. How do we bring on board civil society? So I will be initiating meetings with civil society as well to hear their perspective, to hear their views on this particular topic. And there will be bilaterals, of course, with certain countries on certain issues. So carrying it out within the UN system as it is designed to make sure that we are able to formulate and come out of CSW 66 with agreed consensus on how do we advance the agenda on climate action to benefit women. But on the other side, one has to think quite carefully about what does South Africa chairship mean? What does it mean to the women of South Africa? What does it mean to the women in the region of SADC, our region in SADC? What does it mean to the women in the continent? We know the serious challenges that climate has for the continent as a whole, even at home. I mean, the drought that we are experiencing, you look at SADC, some of the challenges that we are experiencing around climate, you look at Sahel region, Great Lakes region, and the impact of climate there. So one has to look at it and say, in concrete ways, what does South African chairship mean for the continent as a whole? So balancing the two, doing what is necessary for this machinery together with UN Women to make sure that we advance the agenda, but at the same time saying, what does this chairship mean? The fact that it's the South African chairship, what does it mean for the continent? And that's what I'll be focusing on as I go, as I work with my colleagues on this.
That's very important. I want to now look at, if you're talking about women, South Africa in itself internally will have its own challenges in terms of gender equality, in terms of violence against women and children. Yeah. There will be a lot of questions asked about then what is the country doing itself in order to advance those interests in terms of advancing the interests of women. I mean, you will be asked in terms of what significance that, the issue, how central are issues of women in South Africa's foreign policy as well. How would you answer that?
No, look, they are very central, very, very central. And again, I'll go back and say to you, to the extent that foreign policy, our foreign policy reflect domestic policies. And if you look at our domestic policies, we've mainstreamed gender in different aspects. If you look at the challenges that we are trying to address, that we continue to address, government continues to address, of poverty, inequality, and unemployment. And then you look at, and it's not only UN Women, the Department of Women that is looking at these issues around how they impact women. It's all ministries. We always say the issues of gender equality cuts across all the aspects, all the segments you can think of. So similarly, in your foreign policy, it needs to reflect that. Concrete example of how central this issue is to our foreign policy. We've just come out of chairing of being a member of the Security Council, right? For the last 2 years. One of our priority was women, peace, and security. That was one of the key priorities of our tenure in the Security Council, recognizing again that conflict impacts disproportionately on women and girls. And we were quite keen to say, how do we focus on that? How do we work with that? And how do we make sure that all the resolutions that have been taken in the UN system on women and conflict are being addressed, are being implemented, and hence our resolution that was unanimously adopted in 2019-2493 focused on making sure that immediately we implement full implementation of all these provisions of previous resolutions, but also raised new issues of making sure that women are included in conflict situations and right from the onset, from when you get the parties to negotiate, all the way to peacekeeping. And linked to that, you will have seen that South Africa has been the leading country in terms of women peacekeepers, within the UN system, which is part of foreign policy, defense policy, foreign policy. So it is very, very, very central. If you look at our National Action Plan that was just adopted a few weeks ago, you will see that South Africa is also playing an important role there on women, peace, and security. The work that I was previously involved with, making sure that we build the capacity of women peace builders, not only in South Africa, but women peace builders in the continent, in all regions of our continent. The work that we've done while we were chairing the African Union, so it wasn't just at the Security Council, but also at the AU. So gender equality, women empowerment, meaningful participation, and inclusion of women in all key processes is something that we care about, not just care about, but make sure that it happens in our foreign policy.
Yeah. Talking about South Africa's foreign policy, there's an issue that you mentioned in your inaugural address to the United Nations early in a month ago, talking about we need to have a UN which is representative. South Africa has played a role, you mentioned before, at the United Nations Security Council, a non-permanent member, not even once, not twice, but even 3 times. So a lot of people are talking about what has South Africa achieved? What is South Africa doing? I'm thinking you are having time on the ground with your officials now to carry on some of those work. And when you answer that, I want you to look at why is it significant that we need to continue occupying this strategic position at multilateral bodies? African Union, we've been chairing, in SADC, we have chaired, and we are seeing the president, handing over the chairship of AU, for example. How do you respond to that?
Okay. As I said, I think it goes back to who we are, the DNA of who we are, and the product, the fact that we are a product of a multilateral, of global solidarity. We are a product as a country of global solidarity. We have a lot to offer to the world out there through whether it's the African Union or the UN. And we have a very strong constitution that guides us. We have values that have seen us through difficult times up to where we are today, and will continue to see us into the future. So South Africa has a lot to offer. So because we believe in a multilateral approach to solving global questions, to addressing global issues, towards global policy development, and that's why we want to be in that space and bring those important values, values of equality, justice, fairness, and you can find them in our constitution. And we bring them to this table where we are negotiating on these global policies to advance humanity, to advance and to try and resolve the problems that we're dealing with. And at any point in time, you can think of a problem and see South Africa's approach to resolving that problem, and you'll see that it's principled, it's fair, it's about justice. You just have to look at what we've initiated at the WTO around TRIPS waiver. Again, it's based on the values that we believe in, access to health, equality, equity, and so forth. So in this space at the UN, we bring that, and it is appreciated by member states as we engage. It is appreciated by the UN system itself, and because of that, we are able to deal with challenging situations, sticky situations. We often play the role of the bridge builder. We often are able to innovate and bring in new solutions and look at things differently. And you can do it because you know you are coming from a principled position, and they know that you are coming from a principled position. And so it's important for us to continue playing a role and contributing to global development and addressing global challenges. And we have to do that, and we are capable of doing that. And we've been doing that since the advent of our democracy.
Obviously, since the readmission, South Africa has played quite an important role, not only here in the continent, but also elsewhere around the world. I see we are also in the Peace Building Commission. What work are we doing there in the commission? I know that you talk about South Africa's role in terms of building.
I have lost you, Tali. Tali, I've lost you. Okay, there is. Yeah.
Yes, Ambassador. I see we are at the, yes.
Okay, so you wanted to know about our involvement in the Peace Building Commission.
Yeah.
It is an important one. It is one that we are stepping into this time around. It's not the first time, by the way, that South Africa is elected into the Peace Building Commission. In fact, in 2010, it played an important role where it co-facilitated or co-led the review of the machinery itself, the Peace Building Commission itself, which is an important process here when you review, because reviewing say, how do we do it better? How do we do it differently? And South Africa co-led that process in 2010. And so coming out of the Security Council and moving into the peace building. So the issue is really what is the peace building commission all about, and what does it focus on as different from the Security Council? So it is an advisory body of the UN, it reports both to the Assembly and the Security Council. So whatever it does, it reports back to the Assembly and it reports back to the Security Council. And essentially it supports peace efforts in conflict-affected countries. And so any country that you can think of that is going through conflict and requires support and say, I need support, it can go to the peace building for it to get support. And these are countries that often are in transition. You know, the conflict has ended and they're transitioning into a democratic dispensation, if you like. And our desire to be in the Peace Building Commission also came from our belief in preventative diplomacy, you know, because often, you know, you get involved and say the conflict has ended, and then we withdraw. But it is most difficult for that transition to happen after conflict, when states now need to put in place institutions, processes to make sure that they continue post-conflict. So if you look at, if you don't do that, support states post-conflict, the likelihood of going back is very high. So South Africa looks at it as part of its preventative diplomacy. And that's why we were quite keen. So in the Security Council, dealing with conflict areas, but in the peace building, post-conflict, and how do we assist and become part of efforts that are dealing with peace, addressing peace, and making sure that is post-conflict issues are dealt with sufficiently. So we are there starting January this year. So I arrived on that. And I think if you again look at what we bring to the table, we bring our own experience as a country that has been through that transition. We are quite strong on transitional justice. We are quite strong on institutions and building institutions that protect democracy and so forth. And all of that we are bringing to the Peace Building Commission. We've worked quite well with the Women, Peace and Security agenda, so we bring in that also, and it's important. We have played peace building roles, if you think about it, in the continent a number of times. So now in the UN, bringing it again to the UN. So there's been, South Africa has had a history of being a mediator, of being a peace builder, of building strong institutions around democracy and transitional justice, and all of those are required in the Peace Building Commission that assist countries that are just coming out of conflict.
Mm-hmm. You did say, Ambassador, you have just arrived in New York, but I'm sure you were ready, you know, to assume these important duties for the country, because it's important for us to also know the journey that you have traveled as a diplomat as well. Before you were in New York, you had a very successful thing as a DDG here in the Department of International Relations and Cooperation. Diplomatic training, you were involved in quite a number of initiatives to train diplomats. You have an idea in terms of how the world is moving, and you are at one of the centers of diplomacy as well. Reflect on your career as a diplomat for us.
It's been an interesting one, Tali. Very one that I appreciate, the one that I do not take for granted, and I have a son, and every time when I introduce myself and I say I'm a public servant, so it's very rare where I say I'm a diplomat. I start first with saying I'm a public servant, because we are part of government, and just, you know, changing that mindset. But as a public servant in the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, you get to have distinct experiences that are linked to the work that we do in the department. I really believe in that this department cannot afford not to have strong talent. if you are looking at what we do, who our interlocutors are, we are engaging with the globe, we're engaging bilaterally, multilaterally, and you need the best of the best, the talent that you can have, so that we do the best for our beloved country, South Africa, and position it in a manner that is that South Africa deserves, in fact. So I was just humbled to be able to be part of that system that supports the positioning of South Africa globally, that goes out and look for opportunities for South Africa, for South Africans, that goes out and do what South Africa does best, sharing our abilities, our capabilities with the rest of humanity. And so it allows you to do that. DECO allows you. So I've been at head office, being responsible for looking for talent, recruiting talent when I was in the HR role. I've been out being posted before as an ambassador in the Caribbean, and also at the International Seabed Authority, where you are dealing again with other issues and with the diaspora, you know, and rather CARICOM countries, which are the 6th region of the AU, if you like. Very, very interesting posting that was. And then coming back and then being given the responsibility for building the capabilities, the capacities of diplomats. So it's been an interesting, fulfilling career, and now I'm here, and Tali, I'm here, yes, but I stand on the shoulders of the many women ambassadors that I came into the system and met. They have nurtured me. Some of them are still in the system. I remember many, many women ambassadors when I came in 20 years ago as I wasn't this old at the time, and they were there, and they were there for me, and they will continue to be there for me even today. And we as DECO have had women ministers that are strong, that have looked out for the interest of women, that have given platform and space for women to experience themselves, to test themselves, and to give of what they give. And I'm grateful to Minister Pandor right now, who has given me this opportunity and for me to play this role. Of course, credit really in terms of this role now has to go to the head of state, the president, because he was very clear that he would like a woman to be in this position of a permanent representative to the UN, and minister was quite decisive about it, and here I am. So this is, yes, where I am in terms of my career, but it has been built, it has been nurtured. I can give you a long list of those that have nurtured and built my career within DECO.
Ambassador, I want us to conclude, maybe in a few seconds' time, reflect on women leadership generally. I know you have already mentioned about women who have led the department, but also female diplomats. I mean, we know quite a number of South African female ambassadors, and those who are serving even at administrative role in our many embassies that we have around the globe, will continue to do some marvelous work.
Yeah. No, look, one of the group that inspires me also is the young women in DECO. I happen to have a special connection with a lot of them when I was in the DDG and Chief Director for Human Resources, and when I was involved in recruiting them, in building talent within human resources, and they, I mean, I look at this mission where I am now, and I look at the young women that are here, Tebo Hobabedi, Penny, Penelope Makati, okay, there are other women, Soraya and Dima Makwabe, but these are women that are hardworking. These are women that are giving their best, and these are women that are mindful of who I am and have rallied around to support me. But let's not think that I have, and I really have to say, there's a very strong team that I work with of men and women, and the men that are here also, starting with the DPR Ambassador Xolisa Mabongo, who is a multilateralist himself, quite strong, and my other colleagues that are here. So yes, women diplomats, young female diplomats that I've worked with that have given me so much joy, and really I don't want to mention names because then I forget others, but there've been many of them that have given me so much joy working with them, learning from them, because the young diplomats, they are able to hold up a mirror to you, and you need to see and hear and engage.
Let me thank you so much for your time. Really a pleasure for you to find time within a very busy schedule. I will request that we speak regularly to update South Africans, to update the continent of what South Africa is doing. We do know that through public diplomacy, we're going to engage with you quite often on these important issues of what South Africa is doing there at the United Nations, but on other agencies as well, as we're going to go around the world and look at and talk to ambassadors who are representing us throughout this length and breadth of this world and of the continent as well. Ambassador Mathu Joyini, let me thank you so much for joining us as a permanent representative for South Africa in the United Nations. Thank you so much for joining us here at this important conversation that you have afforded us.
Thank you so much, Tali. And yes, I agree. We'll have many other opportunities to engage on the role of South Africa here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.